The galaxy had grown quiet over the past 300 years. Too quiet, some said. The great wars that once raged between star systems had faded into memory, replaced by trade agreements and diplomatic summits. Most species had forgotten what true warfare looked like, what it meant when entire civilizations mobilized for total conflict. Most species, but not all. Admiral Cathara of the Zephyrian Coalition stared at the holographic display floating above her command deck. The readings made no sense. Her fleet of 47 vessels, each one a masterpiece of modern military engineering, had been patrolling the Outer Rim territories when the distress signal arrived. It came from Kepler 442, a small mining colony inhabited by the peaceful Novari people. "Signal strength is increasing, Admiral," reported her communications officer, a young Zephyrian whose scales still held the bright blue of youth. "The transmission is strange. It's using an old emergency frequency that hasn't been active for centuries." Cathara's tail twitched with unease. The Zephyrians had been the dominant military force in this sector for over 200 years. Their ships were fast, their weapons precise, and their tactics proven in countless smaller conflicts. When the Novari colony had requested protection from pirate raids 6 months ago, the Coalition had responded immediately. It was supposed to be a routine peacekeeping mission. "What's the nature of the distress call?" she asked, her clawed hands gripping the command rail. "That's just it, Admiral. It's not from the Novari. The signal is coming from... well, it's coming from humans." A ripple of confusion passed through the bridge crew. Humans were a known species, certainly. They had established colonies throughout the galaxy and were generally regarded as competent traders and miners. But they were not known as warriors. In fact, most galactic military academies barely mentioned human combat capabilities in their curricula. Why would they be sending distress signals from Novari space? "Patch me through to the colony's main communication hub," Cathara ordered. "I want to speak with Governor Thelmos directly." The response came quickly, but the voice that answered was not the familiar melodic tone of Novari speech. It was rough, urgent, and distinctly human. "This is Colonel Sarah Chen, Terran Colonial Defense Force. Governor Thelmos is dead. The colony is under siege. We need immediate evacuation for 12,000 civilians." Cathara's scales darkened with surprise. Terran Colonial Defense Force? She had never heard of such an organization. "Colonel Chen, this is Admiral Cathara of the Zephyrian Coalition. What is your status? Who is besieging the colony?" "Admiral, we've got incoming hostile forces. Unknown species, definitely not from this sector. They've already glassed 3 outer settlements, and they're moving toward the main colony. Their ships are unlike anything in our databases. We're holding them off, but we won't last much longer." Through the static-filled transmission, Cathara could hear the distant sound of weapons fire and explosions. "Colonel, what forces do you have available? We're en route with a full battle group." There was a pause before Chen responded, and when she did, her voice carried a strange note that Cathara couldn't quite identify. "Admiral, with respect, you might want to maintain a safe distance until we can assess the threat level. We've already activated emergency protocols." "Colonel, I appreciate your concern, but the Coalition fleet is more than capable of handling whatever pirates or raiders are threatening the colony." Another pause, longer this time. Then Chen's voice returned, clearer now, as if she had moved closer to the communicator. "Admiral, these aren't pirates. The ships that hit us are each the size of a small moon. We've counted at least 200 of them, and they're not interested in negotiation." Cathara felt a chill run down her spine. Ships the size of moons. That was impossible. No species in the known galaxy possessed that level of technology. "Colonel, are you certain of these readings?" "Confirmed, Admiral. And there's something else you should know. The human colonies have been preparing for this possibility for a very long time. When the old wars ended, we didn't disarm like everyone else did. We built something else instead." The transmission crackled, and suddenly the main view screen filled with an image that made every member of the Zephyrian bridge crew freeze in shock. Rising from the surface of Kepler 442, breaking through the planet's atmosphere like ancient titans awakening from slumber, were structures that defied comprehension. They were ships, but calling them ships was like calling a mountain a pebble. Each vessel stretched for hundreds of kilometers, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that looked like they could crack planets. Their design was brutal, functional, and terrifying in its implications. These were not exploration vessels or cargo haulers. These were weapons of war, built by a species that understood destruction on a galactic scale. "My gods," whispered the Zephyrian tactical officer. "What are those things?" Colonel Chen's voice came through the speakers one more time, and now Cathara understood the strange note she had heard earlier. It wasn't fear or desperation, it was anticipation. "Admiral, I'd like you to meet the Terran Dreadnought fleet. We've been keeping them in reserve for 3 centuries, waiting for the day when the galaxy would need to remember what real warfare looks like. Today is that day." As the massive human ships cleared the planet's gravity well, their sensors began painting targeting solutions across space. Whatever species had thought to prey upon a defenseless mining colony was about to learn why humanity had been so quiet during the long peace. It wasn't because they had forgotten how to fight, it was because they had been building something that would make their enemies wish they had never been born. The distress call had been answered, and the galaxy was about to remember why humans had been so feared during the old wars. The war titans were awake, and they were very, very hungry. The first salvo from the human dreadnoughts lit up space like a newborn star. Admiral Cathara watched in stunned silence as beams of energy, each one thicker than her flagship, reached across the void to strike the massive alien vessels that had been terrorizing the Novari colony. The invading ships were enormous, easily dwarfing anything in the Coalition fleet. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb light, and their weapons had been systematically destroying everything in their path. But as the human weapons found their targets, Cathara realized that size meant nothing when faced with properly applied force. The first alien vessel to take a direct hit simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not crippled, but completely erased from reality as if it had never been there at all. The second tried to return fire, its massive cannons swiveling toward the nearest human dreadnought. The return shot struck the human ship directly, but instead of penetrating the hull, the alien weapon's energy seemed to be absorbed and redirected back at the attacker. "Impossible," breathed the Zephyrian weapons officer. "Those energy readings are off our charts." "How are the humans generating that kind of power?" Colonel Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. "Admiral Cathara, we're going to need you to pull your fleet back another 50,000 kilometers. We're about to engage primary weapon systems, and the electromagnetic interference will scramble your navigation systems." Primary weapons? Cathara could barely process what she was seeing. "Colonel, what you just fired looked like primary weapons to me." A sound came through the speakers that it took Cathara a moment to recognize. Colonel Chen was laughing. "Admiral, that was just our point defense systems clearing the immediate area. The main batteries haven't even powered up yet." As if summoned by her words, the massive human vessels began to change. Sections of their hulls that had appeared to be armor plating split open, revealing weapon systems that made the previous barrage look like a child's toy. The energy readings from the human ships spiked so dramatically that the Coalition fleet's sensors began issuing critical overload warnings. "All ships, emergency retreat," Cathara ordered. "Fall back to minimum safe distance." Through the viewports, they could see space itself beginning to bend and distort around the human weapons as they charged. The very fabric of reality seemed to ripple like water, and several of the smaller alien vessels caught in the effect began to stretch and deform as if they were being pulled apart by invisible hands. "Titan-class planet crackers charging to full power," came another human voice. This one deeper and speaking with the calm authority of someone accustomed to giving orders that could reshape star systems. "All civilian vessels clear the engagement zone, firing in 30 seconds. Planet crackers. The term sent a wave of ice through Cathara's veins. During the old wars, there had been rumors of weapons capable of destroying entire worlds, but most galactic historians dismissed them as propaganda and exaggeration. No species would be insane enough to build weapons that could literally crack planets apart. Apparently, no species except humans. The countdown reached 0, and the human dreadnoughts fired their main batteries simultaneously. The energy release was so intense that it temporarily blinded every optical sensor in the Coalition fleet. When their vision cleared, they saw that the entire alien invasion force had simply vanished, not destroyed in the conventional sense, but erased so completely that even their debris had been vaporized. But the humans weren't finished. Through the dissipating energy clouds, more vessels were emerging from hidden positions throughout the system. Sleek, predatory ships that moved with a grace that spoke of artificial intelligence and machine precision. Behind them came larger vessels, their hulls opening like flower petals to release swarms of smaller craft that moved with the coordinated efficiency of a hive mind. "My gods," whispered the Zephyrian science officer. "How many ships do they have?" Colonel Chen's voice returned, but now she was speaking to someone else, issuing orders in rapid-fire military terminology. "Confirm all hostile vessels neutralized in this sector. Begin sweep pattern for any survivors. Deploy reconnaissance drones to track their origin point. And get me a line to Central Command. Tell them Code Black protocols are now active." "Colonel," Cathara managed to find her voice. "What is Code Black?" The silence stretched for a long moment before Chen responded. "Admiral, during the peace years, the human government made a decision. We would honor all treaties, engage in fair trade, and contribute to galactic stability. But we also made another decision. If any species ever threatened the innocent peoples of the galaxy with extinction-level warfare, we would be ready to respond." On the main screen, the image shifted to show the human fleet in its full glory. Hundreds of massive vessels hung in space like sleeping giants, their hulls bristling with weapons that could reshape solar systems. In the background, larger shapes moved in the distance, so vast that they had to be space stations or mobile battle platforms. Code Black means that someone has crossed a line that should never be crossed. These aliens didn't come here to raid or conquer. Their ships were designed for one purpose: complete extermination of all life in this system. We've seen this signature before, Admiral. This is the same species that sterilized the Andorian cluster 70 years ago, the one that left the Helios system as nothing but dead rock and poisoned atmosphere. Cathara felt her blood turn to ice. The Andorian cluster had been home to 6 billion sentient beings across 12 worlds. The official reports claimed it had been a natural disaster, a cascade of stellar instabilities that had rendered the entire region uninhabitable. If Chen was telling the truth, then this enemy had been systematically exterminating civilizations for decades without anyone realizing it. "How do you know this?" she asked. "Because we've been tracking them, Admiral. The human intelligence services never stopped monitoring galactic threats after the peace accords. We've been watching, waiting, and preparing. Today, they finally revealed themselves, and now we can end this." The massive human vessels began to move, their formations shifting with military precision. But they weren't heading toward the colony or retreating to defensive positions. They were setting course for deep space, following the energy trail left by the alien attackers. "Colonel, where are you going?" "To finish what they started, Admiral. Our deep space sensors have tracked their fleet back to its staging area. There are 12,000 more ships waiting in the next system, preparing to continue their extermination campaign. We're going to make sure they never get the chance. As the human war titans disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Cathara realized that everything she thought she knew about galactic politics was about to change. The humans hadn't just answered a distress call. They had revealed themselves as the galaxy's hidden guardians, the apex predators who had been quietly standing watch while everyone else lived in peace. The age of gentle diplomacy was over. The war titans were hunting, and their prey had nowhere left to hide. 3 days later, Admiral Cathara stood on the bridge of the human command ship Retribution, watching through reinforced viewports as the final phase of humanity's response unfolded. The Coalition fleet had followed the human armada to the staging system, though they had been relegated to observer status. What she was witnessing would be discussed in military academies for centuries to come. The alien staging area had been impressive by any standard. 12,000 vessels of various sizes, from moon-sized dreadnoughts to smaller but still massive cruisers, had been arranged in a defensive formation around an artificial structure that could only be described as a death factory. The facility was building more ships, weapons, and deployment systems for what the humans had identified as a galaxy-wide extermination protocol. The aliens had been preparing to wipe out every inhabited world in this sector of space, but they had never encountered anything like the human response. The war titans had not come alone. Behind the initial dreadnought fleet came vessels that defied every conventional understanding of space warfare. City-sized carriers disgorged thousands of smaller craft, each one equipped with artificial intelligence systems that allowed them to coordinate attacks with inhuman precision. Manufacturing ships began constructing new weapons platforms in real time, using the debris from destroyed alien vessels as raw materials. Most terrifying of all were the vessels the humans called reality anchors, ships whose sole purpose was to prevent their enemies from retreating by locking down the space-time continuum itself. "Status report," came the voice of Fleet Admiral Maria Santos, the human commander who had assumed operational control of the entire battle theater. Santos was a small woman by human standards, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. "All alien defensive positions have been neutralized," reported a tactical officer whose augmented cybernetic systems allowed him to process information at superhuman speeds. "The manufacturing facility is attempting to self-destruct, but our containment fields are holding. Engineering teams report they'll have the facility secured within the hour." "Good. What about survivors?" 17 alien vessels are attempting to surrender. Standard procedure?" Admiral Santos paused for a moment, and Cathara could see the weight of command in her expression. "Negative. These aren't soldiers following orders. Our intelligence analysis confirms this species has been systematically exterminating inhabited worlds for over 2 centuries. They've killed approximately 40 billion sentient beings across 37 star systems." She turned to address a communications officer. "Send a message to all alien vessels. Tell them that their crimes against galactic civilization have been noted and judged. Tell them that humanity remembers every world they burned, every species they destroyed. Tell them there will be no surrender, no negotiation, and no mercy." Cathara watched in fascination and horror as the human fleet methodically eliminated the remaining alien forces. There was no anger in their actions, no fury or bloodlust. The humans fought with the cold efficiency of surgeons removing a cancer, each strike calculated for maximum effectiveness with minimum wasted energy. "Admiral Santos," Cathara found herself speaking without meaning to. "This level of military capability, how long have you been building these forces?" Santos turned to face her, and for a moment Cathara saw something in the human commander's eyes that made her understand why this species had inspired such fear during the old wars. "Admiral Cathara, Humanity learned something during our early expansion into space. We learned that the universe is not a peaceful place. We learned that some species see kindness as weakness, diplomacy as opportunity, and peace as preparation time for the next war. She gestured toward the viewports where the last alien vessels were being systematically destroyed. So we made a choice. We would contribute to galactic civilization, honor our treaties, and work toward peace. But we would never again be caught unprepared when real monsters revealed themselves. But the cost, Cathara protested. The resources required to build and maintain a fleet this size must be enormous. Less than the cost of losing everything, Santos replied simply. Every human colony contributes to the War Titan project. Every trading post, every mining operation, every research station sends a portion of its output to maintain our readiness. We've been building these forces for 300 years, Admiral. Every human knows that the price of peace is eternal vigilance. As they spoke, the final phase of the operation was beginning. The massive alien manufacturing facility had been secured, and human engineering teams were working to extract intelligence about other alien installations. What they found sent shockwaves through every species monitoring the battle. "Admiral," reported the intelligence officer, "we've accessed their central databases. This wasn't their main force. This was just one of 47 similar staging areas scattered throughout the galaxy. They've been preparing for simultaneous strikes against every major inhabited system in known space." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. If the aliens had succeeded in their plan, billions of worlds would have been sterilized simultaneously. The entire galactic civilization would have been erased in a matter of days. "How long until they were ready to launch?" Santos asked. According to their timeline, the coordinated attacks were scheduled to begin in 6 months. Admiral Santos nodded grimly. "Then we have work to do. Signal all human fleets. Activate the full War Titan protocol. I want every one of their installations located and eliminated within 90 days. She turned to Cathara. "Admiral, I'm going to ask something of the Coalition that hasn't been asked in 3 centuries. We need your help. Not as military support, but as witnesses. When this is over, when humanity has eliminated this threat, the galaxy needs to understand what almost happened. They need to know that the only reason they're still alive is because one species refused to forget how to fight." Over the following months, Admiral Cathara accompanied human forces as they systematically dismantled the largest extermination operation in galactic history. The War Titans struck with precision and overwhelming force, eliminating each alien installation before they could coordinate a response. The enemy species, so confident in their superiority and stealth, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn by humans who had spent centuries preparing for exactly this scenario. When the final alien stronghold fell, the galaxy was left with a new understanding of the species they had dismissed as simple traders and miners. Humanity had revealed itself as the apex predator of known space, the civilization that had been quietly standing guard while everyone else enjoyed the luxury of peace. The distress call from Kepler 442 had done more than summon help for a beleaguered colony. It had awakened guardians who had been waiting in the darkness for 300 years, ready to defend a galaxy that had forgotten the price of freedom. And now, with the threat eliminated and the War Titans returning to their hidden positions throughout space, the galaxy could sleep peacefully once again. But they would never forget that humanity was watching, waiting, and always prepared to remind the universe that some lines should never be crossed. The age of human guardianship had begun,